Okay, and we'll begin now with a presentation by Law Director Lisa Eliason, who is going to provide some information on Ohio ethics training. And tonight is February 15th, 2016 at 6:09 p.m. Thank you.
Good evening. This is basically my second in a series of trainings that I wanted to do for Athens City Council, and this one is under the Ohio ethics law. I've provided you with a pamphlet, and on the front I have 5 areas of Ohio ethics law for study and consideration. What I've done is gone through the Ohio ethics law and put it together in what we called in law school a nutshell. I've taken all the law and tried to condense it, and I've taken it into 5 areas of ethics law that would be of interest to you. The first part is conflicts of interest, and as we go through this, I want you to think about the answers to these questions. This is the same presentation I did to another group of city employees just a few weeks ago. So on conflict of interest, some of the things I want you to think about as we go through all of this: can a public official act on matters that affect property the official owns? Can a public official or employee have a private job? Under gifts, so again, 5 areas of law. Conflict of interest is the first. Gifts. Can a public official or employee accept a gift? And what does anything of value mean? There are post-employment restrictions, representation in the revolving door. That's another area of ethics law. Are there any limits on a public official or employee who is seeking a new job? If a public official or employee takes a new job, is he or she subject to post-employment constraints? Can a governing board member be hired by the agency he or she leads? Another area of ethics law. So again, conflict of interest, gifts, post-employment, revolving door, sales to public agencies. Can a public official sell goods or services to the public agency he or she serves? Finally, nepotism. Can a public official or employee hire his or her family member? Who are an official's or employee's family members whom the official or employee cannot hire? And can a public official or family member serve the same public agency? So those are questions I want you to think about as we're going through the law in those 5 areas of ethics law. Now, the Ohio Ethics Commission has a training, and I did that training. It's online. It's maybe about 45 minutes, and you get a nice little certificate that says you're trained under Ohio ethics law. So if you're interested in that, you can also do that. The ethics law comes from the Ohio Revised Code, and if you'll turn to page 2, I, again, have taken those 5 areas of law, and I tell you the exact code provision that it comes from. For instance, conflict of interest law comes from Revised Code 10203D, and the important thing to get out of that section, and I bolded some things, and in law school we called those buzzwords. So I've bolded some of these things for you. Under conflict of interest, the important words are use or authorize the use of authority to secure anything of value and that manifests a substantial and improper influence. So those are the important words to know when you're thinking about conflict of interest. Under gifts, no employee or official shall solicit or accept anything of value that's of a substantial and improper influence. That's in 10203E. F is no person shall promise or give to a public official or employee anything of value. Under RC 292143, that section, section 29 of the Ohio Revised Code, is a criminal section, and that section says no public servant shall knowingly solicit or accept, and that would be anything of value. In addition, under that section, it says you shall not accept any additional or greater fees or costs than are allowed by law. Post-employment representation restrictions, that's Revised Code 10203, that's the revolving door. 10203 talks about 12 months or thereafter, but 292142, the criminal section, states within 1 year thereafter. So it's the same, the 1 year or the 12 months, but those are 2 different sections where it talks about post-employment and the revolving door. Under confidentiality, that also comes from the prohibition on post-employment and restrictions. That section is found in 10203B, and it's no present or former public official or employee shall disclose or use without appropriate authorization any information acquired by the public official or employee in the course of the public official or employee's official duties. That's confidential. So that prohibition is during your employment, but it's a lifetime ban on using any confidential information, even after employment. So not just 1 year after, it's a lifetime ban. All right, under public contracts, unlawful interest, that's 292142. That's the criminal section also. And no public official shall do any of the following. Authorize or employ the authority or influence of the public official to secure authorization of any public contract in which the public official, a member of the public official's family, or a public official's business associate has an interest, or authorize or employ the authority or influence of a public official's office to secure an investment of public funds in any share, bond, mortgage, or security with respect to the public official, a member of the public official's family, or any other public official's business associate. This is the law from the revised code. It's not very exciting, but it's important, and I've put in bold the sections that are very important for you to look at. And the final section, again, I said there were 5 areas of ethics law, and the final one is nepotism, and that one says no public official, and that's, again, under the criminal provisions, shall authorize or employ the authority or influence of the public official's office to secure authorization of any public contract with its public official, a member of the public official's family, or public official's business associates has an interest. There's another section, 10203D. That's not the criminal provision, and 10203E. And that, again, when you're talking about nepotism, you're securing something of value that might have a substantial and improper influence. So, again, 5 sections of Ohio ethics law that comes from the Ohio Revised Code, and some of the provisions are criminal. Okay, so the Ohio Ethics Commission was created in 1973, and it gives advice on ethics issues, provides education, performs confidential criminal investigations on violations of the Ohio ethics law, and acts as the repository for disclosure statements. And I think that all of you know that as an elected public official that you're going to be required, or you are required, to file the disclosure statements. And I believe this year they've moved it a month, and I believe it's May 15th. So some of you who are new on here, I think there are 2 new members, may not be aware of that, or perhaps you are aware of it, but you do have to file that disclosure, and the repository is the Ohio Ethics Commission. So violations of the Ohio ethics law under the revised code, the criminal provisions, can be a misdemeanor, but as far as nepotism, it can be a felony. So it's pretty serious. So let's get into each of those 5 areas. Under conflicts of interest, that prohibits a public employee from using his or her authority to secure something of value. Anything of value would include money, goods, chattels, future employment, interest in realty, and every other thing of value. So conflict of interest could come up with someone in his or her own interests of family members, or interests of business associates. So under that area, you could have 3, your own, a family members, or your business associates. And the influence may arise from approving, voting, which is something you may do, deciding, recommending, advising, investigating, or exercising any other substantial administrative discretion. So the one thing that you have to keep in mind in all of this, the Ohio ethics law, it all comes down to the fact that there's an expectation of the public that you're performing the public's business, that you don't have your own personal interest, the interest of a family member, or your business interest first and foremost. The first and foremost interest should be the interest of the public. So that's the whole objective of Ohio ethics law, and that's how conflicts come up. So here are some simple ones at the top of page 6. Obvious conflicts would be a state employee inspecting his sister's daycare, or here locally would be a code inspector inspecting either his own or somebody in his family, or perhaps a business associate's property. A city employee reviews a permit application of the employee's private employer. That's pretty obvious also. A city employee oversees landscaping but works on weekends for that landscaper, so that would be a conflict. Those are some pretty obvious ones. Now here's a not so obvious one. There might be an employee who is working on a project and does have decision-making ability. So the employee's in a meeting, and at that meeting, they're deciding what they're going to do with a public park. And at that meeting, the employee learns that the city's planning on selling that public park to a private developer. The employee has property that is adjacent to that park. At that point, the employee has a conflict of interest. So conflicts arise all the time. And it's not about the conflict, it's what you do to separate yourself out from the conflict. So in that situation, if there was a supervisor and the supervisor realized that the employee had a conflict, then the supervisor should immediately tell the employee they have to leave the meeting and that they can't participate in any manner. They can't have any communication about it. And the employee himself or herself should know enough about Ohio ethics law to do that, to completely remove themselves from the situation and say, I'm not going to play any part of this, because it would be a conflict. At that point, the employee who may be thinking, oh my gosh, my property value is going to go down because my property abuts the park, and my property value will go down if the city sells it. Well, there's a conflict of interest there, because who does the employee really serve at that point? Is the employee really considering their own interest, or are they more worried? Are they worried about the city's interest, or more worried about their own? So that's where the conflict happens, and they have to step back from that. Okay, gifts. That's under 10203E. And the Ohio ethics law and the related statutes prohibit an official from soliciting or using authority, his or her public position to secure a gift, meal, entertainment, or thing of value if it's of a substantial nature and is provided by someone that's regulated, interested in matters before or doing or seeking to do business with the agency he or she serves. It also prohibits a public employee from accepting anything regardless of its value if the item is provided to the official as compensation for the performance of his public duties. So, at the bottom of 6, prohibited gifts include or are not limited to the payment of a debt, a trip, expenses, money, or something tangible like season tickets, discounts on major consumer items, and lodging. So a few years ago, if you recall, Governor Taft at that time accepted golf trips. And those golf trips were not reported on his Ohio ethics report. And he was actually charged with 2 first-degree misdemeanors and was convicted of those because those were something of substantial value that should have been reported. As you'll find out, usually you have to report something over $75, and he didn't report those, and in the end, he was convicted and received a public reprimand from the Ohio Supreme Court. So the question is whether the item has a substantial influence on the public official in the performance of his or her duties, and I'm at the top of 7. So what's something of substantial value? What kind of gift? A book? Promotional item? Coffee? Popcorn? Cookies? We all get cookies. Our office, the law director's office, we get cookies. And a mouse pad, anything like that. Well, something of a nominal value is not prohibited. You can certainly accept that. But it's probably best to really just avoid any appearance of impropriety. If you have a question about it, then it's best to avoid it. The issue isn't bribery at all. And an absence of bribery doesn't mean you haven't violated the Ohio ethics law. If the gift is something of substantial value and it has an influence on you, then it could be a violation. The prohibition of accepting a substantial gift includes someone seeking to do business with an agency. Now, this is kind of interesting, though, because this has happened in our office. A private person couldn't accept something, well, a private employee couldn't accept something of substantial value. But an agency itself can. The Ohio ethics law says you can. So, for instance, let's say that we buy a new copier in our office, and it comes with extra paper. Certainly, we can accept that. We don't have to turn that away. The question isn't what's received, it's whether or not, for instance, the employee couldn't take that paper home with them. But we could accept it as a gift in the office. But the person, if it was of substantial value, the employee couldn't accept that as a gift. This is interesting. I know a lot of you go to conferences, and sometimes at those conferences you go into, the vendors have usually nice displays, and you go in and get little items at the vendors, little things like maybe you'll get cookies or candy or a little stress ball or something like those. That's not of substantial value, so you can certainly accept that. But let's say that you have a raffle, and they have a raffle there, and it's an iPad mini, and it's like $300, and you win the raffle. So the question becomes, can you accept that? And the answer to that is yes, but not for your own personal use. It could be something you bring back to the office. But you can't accept it because this vendor could be a potential person who has a relationship with the city, a business relationship. And, I mean, that's why the vendors are there. They're not there for any other reason other than to try to do business with the people who are there. So you could accept it, but it's something that has to come back, and it would be a gift that's really for the city. Now, what if, and this was something that was in the training, the Ohio Ethics Commission, what if there's a 50-50 raffle at the training that you go to? And you win the 50-50 raffle. So let's say it was $100 and you walk away with the $100. The answer to that is no, because you can't accept it because it's considered to be supplemental income, and it would be prohibited. Okay, on the bottom of page 7, I'm looking at the time. This is post-employment restrictions, representation in the revolving door. Under this, the Ohio ethics law and related statutes prohibit an employee from soliciting or using his position to get a job from any person that's regulated by his public agency, doing or seeking to do business with the public agency or interested in matters before the public agency. So if an employee is currently with a public agency, then and seeking to get a job with someone with whom the city does business or the public agency does business, it's not enough for that employee to just step back and say, hey, I just won't be involved with that. I won't, maybe you're doing inspections or something like that. I won't do the inspections. That's not enough. If the employee really is trying to seek to do business with someone or seek to get a job and the city's doing business, then that employee would have to state to their supervisor, this is what's happening, I'm trying to get a job, and would have to be completely removed from the situation. Some of this might not have any, might not be important to you as members of council, but it's just interesting to know what the Ohio ethics law says about these areas. And again, I told you that the Ohio ethics law, it's 12 months, 1 year, the prohibition on the revolving door. And again, the lifetime prohibition on disclosure of confidential information before, during, and then after leaving the position. The one that I saw most when I was doing my research on this is public contracts restraints. So this is under the criminal provisions 2921 and just generally under the ethics law 10204. A public official shall not authorize or use authority to secure a public contract for himself, which we know, a family member or business associate, and shall not have an interest in public contracts entered into by a public agency with which he's connected, he or she is connected. Connected means related to or associated with. A public official can't profit from a public contract. Okay, nepotism, and that's the top of page 9. That's the criminal provisions, and again, I said that that could be a felony of the 4th degree, and that's using an official position to employ a family member, using authority in the public position to secure authorization of a family member, a position for a family member. So in most situations, the law and related statutes don't prohibit members from being employed by the same agency so long as no official has secured a job or related benefits for his or her family members. However, so 2 family members can work together. However, one family member cannot supervise another. Family members include a husband or wife, child or grandchild of any age, regardless of whether dependent, parent or grandparent, brother or sister, stepchild or step-parent. However, it also includes any person who's related to the official by blood or marriage, uncle, aunt, cousin, niece, nephew, and in-laws who live in the same household. So if it's a distant member, if they live in the same household with the official. And this includes seasonal work, so should keep that in mind. So the key is that the public official cannot hire or use their public position to influence hiring. And nepotism can occur in areas of public contracts, and that includes a nominal purchase with no written contract. So in a situation like that, the person must recuse himself or herself. So at the bottom of 9, and I'm kind of going through this rapidly because I have 2 cases that I want, well, 2 situations I want to get to. But at the bottom of 9, I have a common sense wrap-up. A lot of this is common sense. If it doesn't feel right, has an appearance of impropriety, then it should be something that you really take a look at. And I have that on the last page. So, common sense wrap-up. A public employee cannot authorize a contract or use authority to secure authorization of a contract for himself, herself, family, or business associates. Cannot solicit or accept things of value, cannot disclose or use confidential information, cannot receive additional compensation for the performance of official duties, and cannot represent parties on matters in which the public servant's involved, cannot participate in matters where the public servant has a conflict of interest, where something of value will result for the self, family members, or others. So that's really kind of everything in a nutshell. And I know I went through that very quickly, but a lot of it doesn't really apply to you, although maybe the gifts do, the confidentiality, some of the other matters there. So when in doubt, always avoid the appearance of an impropriety. You can always contact me. I've given you my contact information. But you can also contact the Ohio Ethics Commission because they've made it very clear that they are there to answer questions if you have an ethics question, so that you come up with a solution before you perhaps vote on something. So again, conflicts exist, but it's not just the conflict, it's what you do about the conflict that's very important. I've included, I'm not going to go through those answers because they're pretty, after we went through this, I think you could probably answer those yourself, but I did include the answers on the back in the 5 areas of ethics law for consideration. Really what I wanted to get to that's probably the most important to you. I have 2 opinions here, and the law comes from different places on Ohio ethics law. The law comes from case law, from the courts. There are quite a few cases that are decided in Court of Appeals and also Supreme Court. The other place it comes from is Ohio Ethics Commission advisory opinions. When I say law, advisory opinion is advice, just as it states. It's advice. If you have a question, you can ask the Ohio Ethics Commission to answer it, and they may give you an advisory opinion, or they may give you an advisory letter. And the other place that it comes from, and there's quite a bit of quite a bit of study from this area is from Ohio Attorney General opinions, and I think I attached, did I attach those to, you have those? You have several pages at the back, okay. All right, and I'm not going to go through all those because those are really for you to go through. But the first thing in the first attachment I have from the Ohio Ethics Commission, and I remember this quite well, this was December 23rd, 2005. Former Law Director Gary Hunter asked the Ohio Ethics Commission for their opinion. And in the first paragraph, it says the Ethics Commission kind of answered him and said, in your letter, you asked whether the Ohio ethics law and related statutes prohibit 4 of the members of the Athens City Council from participating in the approval of a planned unit development retirement village on land that's owned by Ohio University. And he's also asked how a majority vote is to be determined when the ethics law prohibits multiple members of City Council from participating in specific matters due to a prohibited conflict. The Ethics Commission didn't answer that one. You can look through here, and really what they did was just referred Mr. Hunter on to some other cases. But the first question that Mr. Hunter asked was, does the ethics law prohibit these 4 people? Now, 3 of them were members of council, and 1 was a graduate student. So, the 3 members of council, and I'm on the second page of that opinion, the brief answer was that the 3 members of council who were employees of OU are prohibited from voting, deliberating, participating in discussions, or otherwise using their official position as city council members, either formally or informally, in matters concerning the legislation to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation involving their employer. The 4th one, the graduate student, wasn't prohibited. So those 3 members were prohibited. And the 4 members were, well, the 3, because the other was a graduate student. 1 council member was an associate vice president for finance and administration. 1 was a member of the faculty, and 1 was employed as a research technician. So in this advisory letter, what the Ethics Commission stated was those 3 people from 3 very different areas of the university were prohibited from participating in the discussion and voting on that matter. So as you can see, they cite 10203D and E, just as I laid out the law for you. I put it in your packet. And they looked at those, and also 10203 of the revised code, well, 10203D and E. D was authorize the use of the authority or influence of the office or employment to secure anything of value or promise or offer of anything of value that's of such a character as to manifest a substantial and improper influence upon the public official or employee with respect to the person's duties. These are words, I call them buzzwords, and you'll hear those words over and over. And the important words from the Ohio Revised Code, you'll hear them over and over in the conflict of interest statutes. And then E was no public official or employee shall solicit or accept anything of value that's of such a character as to manifest substantial and improper influence upon the public official or employee with respect to the person's duties. This letter, and it was an advisory letter, it wasn't an opinion, advisory letter, says a public official or employee is a member of city council, so you are all public official or employee. So the Ohio ethics law pertain to you. Anything of value, again, in this advisory letter, included money and every other thing of value. The beneficial or detrimental economic impact of a decision by a public entity is a thing of value for purposes of 10203. So in this situation, any beneficial or detrimental financial impact to OU from City Council's action involving the land that's owned by OU is a thing of value. They cite other advisory opinions in this and give some examples of other examples I'm not going to get into. But at page 5 of that opinion, at the bottom paragraph, they talk about the definite and direct impact. So those are important words also. Definite and direct impact on the value of OU's property, along with other benefits to OU that would accrue from the proposed PUD, are within the definition of anything of value that is of such a character as to manifest a substantial and improper influence upon council members employed by OU with respect to their ability to exercise their authority independently on behalf of all citizens of the city. And again, that's what I was talking about. It's the idea of who do you serve here? Which master do you serve? You're a public official, and the expectation of the public is that you're here for the public's best interest, that you're not here for some other interest. And in this situation, these three members of council were told that they couldn't participate in the deliberations or vote. So that was the advisory letter in 2005. The conclusion that they came to on page 7 is the three council members who are employees of OU are prohibited from voting, deliberating, participating in discussion, or otherwise using their official positions as city council members, either formally or informally, in matters concerning the legislation to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation involving their employer. So informally could be committee meetings. That's informally also. Okay. So then there was a 2007 case. Well, I'm not going to call it a case, an opinion. The other was an advisory letter, and this is an opinion.
Lisa, I had just a question. I was kind of curious. You've indicated that there'd be a conflict of interest in voting for city council members. In your opinion, based upon what you know, would there be a conflict of interest for a city law director who's in charge of enforcing the housing code in a city to be a substantial owner of rental properties at that time?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that that's ever been asked.
Do you know if Mr. Hunter was ever asked that question?
I don't know that he was asked that question. I know that it has been an issue at the Code Enforcement Office, that it's been made clear that people who are, I mean, this is the Ohio Ethics Law, that code enforcement officers who are inspecting, that would be a conflict for them to inspect their own property. And I don't know what the policy is down there at the code office.
Could I ask one other question? What would be the remedy for a city official who learns that another city official is perhaps in violation of the ethics code? Would it be to come to the city law director and file a complaint, or would it be to...
I think the first step would be to consult the Ohio Ethics Commission and ask if it is.
Okay.
That would be the first step.
Thank you.
Okay, so then there's another case that, opinion that I'd like you to take a look at, 2007-1, council member employed by a college. And the question that was asked of the Ohio Ethics Commission was, does the ethics law prohibit a member of village council who is also employed with a college from participating in matters before council that affect the college? This is very similar to the advisory letter that they issued, but this is more definite. It's an advisory opinion, and while it's not definitive, it's not law, it's advisory, and courts could look at this advisory opinion if they're making a decision. So what was the answer to that? The conflict of interest provisions in D&E 10203, again, that I talked about, the revised code prohibit a member of village council who's also employed with the college from participating in any matter before council if the college has a definite and direct interest in the matter. So the key words here, the buzzwords that you should listen for here are definite and direct interest. If there's some indirect, and that's the second one, however, divisions D and E of 10203 do not prohibit a village council member who's also employed with the college from participating in any matter before council in which the college has some indirect or indefinite interest. So this one went a step further and talks about definite and direct, that yes, it would be a conflict, but if it's indirect or indefinite. So to whom does that opinion apply? To any public official or employee of any public agency who's also employed by a college or university. So that one seems to indicate that you have to look a step further, that you're not automatically prohibited, but it's definite and direct interest. This one applied to a statutory city. So if you look at page 2 of that opinion, examples in which a college would have a definite and direct interest include zoning, development, land use matters that affect college-owned property. Well, that's what we were dealing with in the prior advisory letter. Located directly or adjacent to the college, or property located directly or adjacent to the college. Regulatory matters affecting the college, such as code enforcement inspections of college property or college operations that are conducted by village officials or employees. Awards, grants, or contributions from the village to the college, and contracts for goods or services between the village and the college. So a village council member who's employed by a college is not prohibited from participating in any matter where the college does not have a definite and direct interest. Examples would include matters in which the college has some indirect or indefinite interest, such as taxes affecting individuals employed with the village and matters involving general legislation to provide a uniform benefit or detriment to the citizens in the jurisdictions, such as sewer or water rates. So I think that clarifies it a little bit, that it's not any interest, and it's not just, it would be something that's definite and direct. And I think that this 2007 opinion is very good at setting out what definite and direct means, and that could be something that that you keep and take a look at. I know many of you, most of you probably aren't associated with Ohio University, but in anything that in any of your dealings on council, it's just something to keep in mind, definite and direct benefit. Okay, those were just two of the more recent ones that I wanted you to look at. I've also included, I think, 5 pages from the annotations in the Ohio Revised Code of things that are cases, advisory opinions, Ohio Ethics Advisory opinions, Ohio Attorney General opinions, and again, those are useful for courts when they're trying to determine if a violation has occurred. There are just a few that I'll go through, and it's kind of interesting to think about, but service in the military forces of the United States is public employment, and by force of that section, one who enters such military service forfeits his office as city councilman. That was a pretty old decision in 1942, but it still stands. The positions of registrar and professor in a state university or public offices within the meaning of the section prohibits a person from holding public office from being a member of city council, and such persons are disqualified and forfeit the right of their elective offices when they retain their university positions. A member of council is ineligible to be appointed to as a member of a board of health. Let's see, 10203D prohibits a city council member from using or authorizing the use of their authority or influence to secure authorization of any public contract, but we talked about that. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but it would be something interesting for you to go through because, as I said, most of them deal with public contracts and either family member or having a business interest in a public contract. I've gone through this rather rapidly, and you may have questions, may not have questions, but I felt it was important just to go through it. The presentation, I had quite a few questions from the department that I presented to. And if you have questions, what I think I would like for you to do is that you could contact me privately about those and send me an email or just call my office. Right, thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll reconvene in approximately 12 minutes at 7 o'clock for a public hearing, and then after that, we will have our regular session of council. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday night, February 15th at 7 p.m. At 6 o'clock tonight, we had a presentation by the city's law director, Lisa Eliason, a presentation on the Ohio Ethics Commission, and I just wanted to thank her publicly for that information. It was quite helpful for our council members on our continuing training. At 7 o'clock, before we begin our regular session of council, we will be having a public hearing on residential care facilities. And this has a direct bearing on an ordinance that we will be hearing later on tonight, amending a section of our city code. So without further ado, we'll move on to the public hearing. One comment, though, we do have clipboards circulating. I made an announcement just a few minutes ago, but for those of you who came in a little bit later, if you are intending to speak tonight, we ask you to fill out one of those clipboards. Also, the clipboard that says public hearing sign-in sheet, we would like everybody to sign that one, just so we have a document for our records of who attended. Thank you. We'll move on to the public hearing. Councilmember Fall, were you going to speak to some of this?
Oh, I guess. This is pertaining to a ordinance that's for third reading tonight, changing residential care facilities from an R3 permitted use to an R1 permitted use. This is generally to update our code with the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. So that cities are not looking like they are forcing residential care facilities into only certain areas of the city. That's pretty much it. So if anybody would like to come and speak to it.
Do we have any comments from audience members who are intending to speak about this potential or this proposed change to our code? Okay. Well, without any further ado, we'll consider the public hearing closed, and you will be hearing a little bit more of the text of that ordinance a little bit later in our session. Our first item of business during our regular session now is to establish a quorum. We have one council member who is not with us tonight, but we do have a quorum to proceed with business. The next item is the disposition of minutes for the regular session held on January 19th, 2016. We could have a motion for approval of those minutes.
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes held January 19th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. We now have an opportunity for communications from our elected officials. We'll start with council members. Are there any communications? Yes, Councilmember McGee.
Madam President, I do want to point out that I had the opportunity to speak to a student group last night, and there was a great interest in petitioning council and the authorities to close off some of the city streets that are used for the oncoming fests. I think the student feeling was in general that if Court Street can be closed off for midget cars and such, that certainly any kind of gathering of students to celebrate their fest should allow them to have their streets closed off as well. So I would advise council that that would be coming soon with a petition to either the mayor or to the appropriate committee. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge regarding communications that many of us on council were we received letters both for and against certain aspects of the city pool, indoor, outdoor. So we were in receipt of many, many emails, which is great. Community involvement is spectacular. It's what we're here for. Thank you.
And we likewise have heard several communications from members about the mural project at Arts West. And so we will be, we've made record of those, and I have responded to them as well. I do need to go back with our minutes for one other additional motion. We do have minutes from February 1, 2016 that we also need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second. And a second, please?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes for the regular session held February 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And now, having any other communications from council members? We'll move, yes,
Madam
Councilmember
President,
Consis.
I have received a few communications about the bed and breakfast and Airbnb.
Okay, thank you. So I think some of our other council members have too. And on to Mayor Patterson. Do you have any communications tonight?
I do. Like a lot of you have received a number of communications ranging from Airbnb, B&Bs, to swimming pools, to a number of things that are ongoing. The other thing I have an item tonight is waterline work at East State Street and Home. There will be some intermittent street closing of East State Street or Home, but it isn't as major as was previously thought in terms of the waterline break, and so therefore it won't require complete street close down for the maintenance repair. I do want people to exercise caution in driving through that area because there will be water with a water line break, so there could be some ice in the road this evening and tomorrow morning. And this is not the case at this point in time, but a precautionary boil order may go into place, but at this point in time, that's not going to happen. But stay tuned. You can go to the city's website in order to find out if there is a boil order that's been called in that area. That's all I have.
Okay. Law Director Eliason?
No.
Okay. And we have our treasurer with us tonight. Do you have a report? Okay. Okay, for the ordinance that we'll be having later. And I don't believe that Auditor Hecht is with us tonight for an auditor's report. Okay. We'll begin now with ordinances for third reading. The first one is 0216, an ordinance authorizing engineering services for an outdoor municipal swimming pool, Project 292, and authorizing the auditor to borrow up to $500,000 for said services. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President. I'll just make a couple comments, but I won't make a motion yet.
Okay.
I want to express my support for this ordinance. We've discussed this at length, and this allows our city safety director to begin the process of advertising and accepting bids. My concerns, initially I felt some wonder why we were moving so quickly, and this was also echoed by some of the other council members. I believe Councilmember McGee was curious as to why we were moving so quickly on this. And the former Mayor Abel acknowledged the process and the length of time that's necessary to make this happen just to get a pool for 2017. Our concerns, as acknowledged by the advisory board, are many with the pool. There are massive tears in the liner along the shallow end as well as the main part of the bigger pool. There are cracks in the original concrete. The pool was initially built as a large concrete bowl, and that in turn survived many years, but has led to instability with cracks, and so it's not able to retain water. During the Able administration, a liner was purchased for, I believe, $120,000, $130,000, and that was around 15 years ago. It has since failed, and so we're in desperate need of new pool. And acknowledging this pool's liner would be a replacement liner in itself would be $160,000. Likewise, my concerns about the current pool, we're not ADA accessible at the moment, and we're not compliant with ADA. So that in itself would also require more purchases for us to get up to speed with ADA compliance. I have a few more other points, but I know that some of my colleagues want to comment as well as the public interest on this. So I will save a few of my comments for the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Comments from other council members?
President, I actually move to amend 02816.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
I think I'm recognizing what Councilmember Butler has said about the urgency to some degree of having a pool for this summer. I still think that we need to recognize that the planning process was a bit fuddled for many people, and I think that the many letters that we've gotten has shown that it's fuddled. So I would like to make sure that all options are looked at, and I know that this is an ongoing issue, so I would like to change the wording from an ordinance authorizing engineering services for an outdoor municipal swimming pool to an ordinance authorizing engineering services for a municipal swimming pool options. And that way, if we put out a request for an RFQ, whatever, that maybe somebody out there has the perfect option for us. And if we just say outdoor, that limits it. And I've seen a lot of options from people who have gotten in touch with friends who live in other cities or who have an architecture friend that have been putting forward. And I just think that that would be the most democratic way of going forward with this, with the planning process as difficult as it was over the last 2 years.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and are there additional comments from council members before we open up for comments from the public? Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Do we have permission to express opposition to the,
Yes.
at the moment?
You may.
Okay. Well, I'm going to express my opposition to the proposed amendment. I think that it muddies things a little bit, and I think there's simplicity in keeping it read as is with simply acknowledging the need for an outdoor pool at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember McGee, did you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I, too, am quite concerned with time on this, and it's my understanding that if we do pass the amended ordinance, that it'll have to go back for a reading. That's my understanding. I received an email from some citizens earlier today that indicated that they were quite concerned that their children would not have an outdoor pool for the summer. I am quite concerned with that. I'm absolutely appalled at the delay in things, but on the other hand, I am not convinced that now is the time to get rid of the option for an indoor pool, and I think this ordinance would do that. I don't think we have the information for that. As much as I would like to side with Councilman Butler and say, yes, let's get this over with, I can't do that in good conscience because I haven't been given the information that I feel is appropriate. So from my perspective, I would vote for the amendment, Madam President.
And just for point of clarification, I do believe that we could, if the amendment is approved, it would be considered read for the first time, but that the motion could then, for that ordinance, the rules could be suspended so that the motion could be approved as amended, so that there would not be the delay, which I know has been a concern for some. Yes, Councilmember Cochran.
Thank you. I'm also in favor of keeping our options open at this point, and I would like to point out that there's no point in correlating the passage of this ordinance here tonight with the possibility of not having a pool open this season, because we already know that there is a strong likelihood we will not have a pool open this season. We won't be able to get a pool open, a new pool built by this season. Nobody's going to tell you that. We're talking about getting a new pool built for 2017, not 2016. So if the city is not willing to put the money into fixing a pool that's going to be ripped up, we're looking at having a season without a pool anyway. So let's not conflate the issue here of having a season without a pool and not passing this ordinance here tonight.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I remembered another thought I wanted to acknowledge, which is my concerns expressed by the consultants, which is the operating costs of an indoor facility and the revenue loss that takes place and transpires. The estimates from the consultants is at least $100,000 in operating costs. I don't know if we're prepared to staff an indoor facility adequately and fund that. I see concerns and fears there that we might be putting ourselves in a hole. Lastly, I would acknowledge that I do think that there has been interest in an indoor pool from our community, but I think that I would like to see us have more planning and organization to an indoor pool and look at a private-public partnership, and also contact the university, Holzer Clinic, Oblenis, and see what kind of interest we could work together in the future with better planning. So that would be my focus in opposition to amending this at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other council members at this point that who have not spoken who want to take an opportunity to speak? Councilmember Katsas.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess, my biggest worry is if we start to get something that is both indoor, outdoor, some sort of combination, are we going to price out a certain percentage of the population? Right now, this is a recreation that is affordable and achievable for not only our community members, but people that are in our region. And I really worry that if we go forward and do something else, all of a sudden is the price structure going to change? Currently right now at the OU Aquatic Center, during the weekdays, you have anywhere between 10 and a half, 13 and a half hours that the public can use that pool. So I guess probably to some of the people that are here today, maybe they could tell me why that isn't workable, and that we need to have another facility to do this. Thank you.
All right. Now, what we'll do then is other elected officials. So, Mayor Patterson.
The big concern that I have, and I've been doing some homework on this, is, as Member Butler was just explaining, is the deficit that we're likely to have to run at in order to look at the indoor pool facility. I went up to Groveport, Ohio a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, and spoke with the director of their facility, their Arts, Parks, and Rec, and asked about their indoor pool. They have an indoor pool that's been was built in 2003, 2004 timeframe. And what they informed me is that a pool, their indoor pool runs roughly at a 20% deficit annually moving forward, which is, we're talking a lot of money in the hole to keep it afloat, and it has to be subsidized from this, that, and the other place. The thing that's interesting about Groveport to share with all of you is that Groveport, within a 15-mile radius of Groveport, there are no other indoor aquatic centers, so there's no competition between some other aquatic center, whereas here in Athens, there certainly is competition between aquatic centers. If we have, for a city of 23,000 plus or minus, to have 2 indoor aquatic facilities is almost unthinkable. I was kind of going around and looking at other cities comparable to our size, and they're lucky if they have an indoor aquatic facility and an outdoor aquatic facility of any type, let alone the thought of having 2. The other thing I want to share is just recently there were, plus minus some 70 mothers in the city of Athens that were just simply asked a simple question: indoor pool or outdoor pool? And of those, about 61% said outdoor pool. 39% said indoor pool. There was a few that said both. Well, we're not going to, conceivably with the budget or the levy right now, we can't afford both an indoor and an outdoor facility. Which brings me to my last point that I want to make, and that is that I remember distinctly in 2014, early 2014, when we first started really having the serious conversation, should we put a levy on the ballot because our pool is aging? And at that point, it was talking about replacing that pool, and some of those conversations were also revolving around can and should the city of Athens have 2 indoor aquatic facilities for a city our size. You know, and I would contend, one, council, you control the budget. And so therefore, you know, I just ask you to be prudent and savvy about the amount of money that we're going to likely have to shell out to keep an indoor aquatic center in the black. You know, how we're going to juggle those dollars around. You know, and I'm just basing that on what other municipalities are saying, as well as what Brandsetter and Carroll was saying, that you're going to run at a deficit. And again, if I'm looking at a city that has the only thing within a 15-mile radius in terms of an indoor aquatic center and running at a deficit with no one else to compete against, I can only imagine what we're going to have to do when it comes to financials for the city of Athens.
Okay. Councilmember Fall, and then we'll turn to the audience for additional comments.
I don't have as much confidence, I guess, in the report that came forward from Brandsetter and Carroll. I think that we're not saying either or. You know, we're not saying by putting in options instead of outdoor. I think that we're opening it for a creative addressing of all the needs that we've heard the community say. And I just am concerned that if we, I wasn't happy with the plan that was put forward by Brandsetter because for the indoor pool. I thought it was just kind of a knockoff, and they didn't really, I just don't have as much confidence. So it would be nice to have when we put an RFQ out, say these are, you know, these are our desires, and see whether, I have been approached by people who had really cool ideas that may address those issues that you have, which are legitimate, but also all the other legitimate concerns that we've had. And I just think it keeps our options open. It's not going to necessarily add any more time, but I think in a planning kind of realm, that's what I'm comfortable with.
Okay. We'll open it up to comments from the audience. If they have any comments about the pool and the amendment for us to consider the option. Yes, Mr. Pedro.
I told my wife I wouldn't speak tonight.
Okay, come forward. And while you're coming forward, you need to come to the podium and announce your name and your address. And while you're coming forward, I'll also take a moment to welcome the Scout Troop 71 from the city of Athens. And many of the students that are in the Boy Scout troop here tonight also live in the city, but also out in the county. And they're observing here tonight and looking at how citizens handle different issues. So this is certainly somewhere we have an issue with differing opinions on it. So, welcome to the Scout Troop.
Yes, just two comments. I'm ready to take whatever decision the council makes, except if the mayor is going to use a sample and quantity statistics, how many people of the older group were sampled? Some women were sampled, fine, but that's a very narrow group. It doesn't represent the rest of the people. Perhaps some of the people that need a pool that is more accessible to them. And the problem also that was presented was Brandsetter and Carroll did what they were told to do, draw up plans for an outside pool. There was never any question about could we or should we in some way, and how could we or should we put a levy on. This community, I've been here a number of years, has been very good in assessing a community levy when they think it's really good for the community. So I think that problem could be solved. At least I have the confidence in the citizens. Those are just my two comments. I think we pass up a chance to have something very nice if we were to look at this again. We might not, but let's look at it.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Karen Cashagano from 11703 Channing Wayne Boulevard, The Plains. And I would just like to start, I would like you to vote no against this ordinance, but if you decide that you want to go forward with this, I would strongly, strongly urge you to support this amendment. I believe it still allows the option of an outdoor pool, so you'll get those plans, but it doesn't close the door on other possibilities, and it allows you, us, all of us to see more options. I don't believe all of the options have been explored sufficiently, and I believe by using this amendment, approving the amendment instead, if you're not going to vote no, then that allows those options to be considered. I do use the OU pool, and its hours are not as open as you think. It is open to the public at certain times, but for specific things. So, for instance, kids cannot just go in and play at any time that they want to when it's open. They have lap swim, and they have open swim. And the open swim hours are very limited. And it's not satisfying the needs of the community by a long shot. I was just at a swim meet this past Saturday, and the person running the meet said he is not going back there again. He was fed up with the place, with the way it's running right now. So we really do need something different. And who knows when that pool, which is also very old, will be replaced as well. And the polling of mothers, that's just one group of constituents here. There's a lot more people to be polled, and I think there'd be a lot different opinions. So, in support of other options. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could tell us your name and address.
Sure. My name is Dave Worcester. I live at 32 Columbia Avenue in Athens.
Okay, and we are going to start a timer, so don't be alarmed. It does go off
I've
after
timed
3
myself,
minutes.
and I'll be-
Everybody's supposed to have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My wife and I have two children aged 5 and 8. They both attend West Elementary School. And since we started our family in 2007, we have spent what I would say is an incredible amount of time at the outdoor pool in Athens. Our children learn to swim there, and my only complaint would be that if it was open longer in the day and later in the season, we would go more. We sometimes go twice a day. We've even gone 3 times a day. And I know that we're not alone, because when I go there, I see virtually every family that I know at the city pool. There's been a lot of debate about the type of pool that we should build, but the outdoor pool, I feel, is an essential resource for families in the city. And when you speak about polling mothers, I realize that council has heard a lot of the indoor pool community. I would just point out that it's very difficult for mothers and fathers to get here to a council meeting at 7 o'clock. When I talk to other parents, I hear a lot of anxiety about the amount of time that we may go without an outdoor pool facility in Athens. I realize it's going to cost money to replace it for this summer, and that may not happen, but we're also hearing that having an indoor pool is going to cost the same amount of money every year. So with that in mind, I would just urge council to move forward to ensure that we have an outdoor pool facility as soon as possible. Without it, I think is a tremendous loss to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Other comments from the audience? Yes, Mr. Alisa.
Abe Allisoff, 1 Westfield Place. I'd first like to commend Councilman Butler, Coates, and Mayor Patterson for speaking of fiscal responsibility when it comes to an outdoor pool. Being a taxpayer for the city, I do not want to see my taxes go up anymore. Fortunately, me and my wife are going to have a baby on the way, and I'm hoping that we have an outdoor pool for our child to play in. And I spent many of years going to the city pool. It was a good time. And if we wanted to go to an outdoor pool or an indoor pool, we went to the aquatic center. And I think you guys could bridge a gap between the city and the university. You guys are intelligent people. You guys can come up with a solution with the OU bureaucracy and city council to make it accessible for people who want an indoor pool. So I just like to thank you guys for being fiscally responsible and keeping that in mind when you make a decision on whether to vote for this amendment or not.
Other comments from members of the audience? Yes.
My name is Martha Bishop, and I live at 30 Courier Street in Athens. I pay taxes in the city of Athens, and I'm a voter here. I would urge you to adopt the swimming pool options language that has been proposed tonight so that all the options can be considered. I would also urge you to, as we go forward, consider pool designs that would include all the people in the community. I think you've heard from us several times but some of the council members are new, so people that really want to swim want a place to swim. Many of the designs we've seen so far are really inadequate in terms of actual swimming. They have a place for a playground for children to have water splashed on them, but the voters actually approved a swimming pool. So I would like us to have a place where we can actually swim, and people of many ages and walks of life will be able to come there and enjoy the recreation and the exercise. I think as far as the ADA compliance is concerned, some of the plans that we looked at already would meet that, others would not. Like if we're looking at some of the designs that had a separate lap swimming pool, there was no zero entry for that. So I think we need to carefully look at designs that would be presented. And if we're to consider an indoor pool, I don't know if we will, but to take other estimates of what it would cost to run such a pool. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Yeah, I have a few.
And could you tell us your name, please?
Oh, I'm Will Buckley, and I live out in Lottridge, Almette County.
Okay.
I like being, a kid and wanting to go swim in the pool. I would want to know, would a proposed new idea for a new pool, would it make more money over time than the current pool, and how much does the current pool make, like in revenue? So that's really, I want to know, would it be cheaper just to fix the pool now and just do it so we do a good job and fix the pool now so it can be accessible and we can keep using it, or would it be cheaper and we make more revenue over time to build a new pool and have it a lot better than the current pool is now? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. Good questions. Other comments from the audience? Mr. Swearingen, 3 minutes, okay?
My name is Todd Swearingen. I live in Athens County. First of all, Mr. Mayor, you say that your sample pool runs at a 20% deficit. Branstad and Carroll says ours will run at 29% deficit. That's $1 million over 20 years. And the way they came up with that deficit were some substantially unrealistic methodologies. So I wouldn't put much credence in Branstad and Carroll. I might pay a little bit of attention to other moratoriums to some degree. They all lose some money, just not as high as what Branstad and Carroll concocted. 2, ADA access. Those would not be duplicit spendings. They have to go in anyway in a new pool. They're bolt-on parts. Stair access is considered secondary. A chairlift is considered primary. You're not spending any extra money. So you can actually put it in the existing pool without spending an extra dime except for the installation costs. It's, this process has basically negated most of the public input. Just by not paying attention to it. I presented sprung structures early on in March. Saved the city $3, $4, $5, $6 million compared to brick and mortar. And lo and behold, someone in the administration decided to pass a photograph around of the Dallas Cowboys high-tension membrane structure that collapsed on June 9th, or in May of 2009, and said to another city administrator, that's a sprung structure. No, the other one with the pool is a sprung structure. But that myth stood around. Nobody knew about it for almost a year. These are the kind of tricks that were played behind the scenes by administrators to try and garner internal support. I'm sorry, but that's what happened. One of those administrators got fired a week and a half ago. approached Zanesville Natatorium. They got 100% cost recovery. Somebody internally, or the consultant, approached them and badgered them so bad that they asked me personally never to drag them into a conversation again, even though they've got 100% cost recovery. Nobody has heard that particular little tidbit. It's located an independent pool consultant that is running multiple natatoriums right now. He's an independent pool consultant and could provide for a $5,000 bill a secondary peer review, whatever, secondary opinion, pre-surgery is what he called it, a secondary opinion, of how much we would actually spend in the way of operational costs. Nobody in the city ever approached him. That happened in September. Somebody just dropped the ball or walked away from it. I find a construction company that can build twice the pool at $500,000 less. Nobody contacts them. And my particular favorite of all, and I have to ask if this is what OU would do when 10, 15 years down the road they build a new pool, a new natatorium. They'll play to Title IX in the athletic aspect, but they've got 25,000 students that don't use that pool for the same reasons the city don't use that pool, that the residents don't. Now, are they going to design 15 years down the road a facility that doesn't serve the students, or are they going to design something that does serve the students?
You'll need to close the statements.
It's comparing the OU pool to something the city might build is completely non-relevant. I would ask the council, I know it's going to be a close vote, I would ask the council, preserve the city's options. It doesn't cost a penny. Just preserve the city options for tonight. The public has given their input for the past year. They've been dismissed, just abjectly dismissed time in and time out. It's time to put a stop to this charade.
Thanks for the comments. I appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Abel. Mr. Abel's our former mayor and the chair of the Recreation Advisory Committee. So thank you for coming out tonight.
Thanks. I just want to review a couple things that have happened over the intervening years, the 4 years I've been on the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Board. And we were talking about replacing the city swimming pool. And we came up with a plan, and we also did an overall master plan for Arts, Parks, and Recreation. It was completed in November of 2013. And that one had a whole survey of all utility users within the city of Athens. When it was mailed to a selected sample, we got back a return. It was done by Anita James's class. We had other surveys posted online. We went through a couple public meetings about it, etc. And that was put in there. And the number one capital improvement thing that came out of all that was we need to replace the existing city swimming pool. In May of, and I think I'll read a little bit. The current pool is nearing the end of its useful life, both in terms of the condition of the pool as well as the features that it provides with respect to the desires of today's users. A feasibility study is warranted to discover what features are needed in a new swimming pool and the costs of construction. So that was in January of 14. And then after the levy, well, in November or May 7th of 2014, we then made a recommendation to City Council to continue the 0.1% income tax that's there and a series of about 5 areas of recommendations. And in that, again, the first one was to pay any and all expenses associated with construction equipment and furnishing of a swimming pool. Council accepted most of those recommendations. They changed the tax from a renewal to a new tax and the time period to 20 years. They deleted projects approved by council and inserted property acquisition. Then in November 4th of the 2014, the voters voted 59% in favor of the levy. Then the council finally appropriated the money to do the studies with Branstetter Carroll, and in July 17th of 2015, we sent a recommendation to council asking for the design engineering of the outdoor swimming pool. It is now February 15th of 2016. I think some council members and many members of the community do not fully understand the difference between a tax that is for the general expenses of the city and a tax for the purposes that have been outlined by ordinance. The general tax can be spent on anything that is legal, of course, for the city to expend funds for. The purpose tax can only be spent on items as outlined in the ordinance and on the ballot language. Last meeting of City Council, the law director stated that she had reviewed the tapes of council discussion of the ordinance that was approved by the voters, and the only mention of a pool was the need to replace the existing pool. In addition, a check of campaign materials is paid for by the Friends of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, the only campaign committee registered with the Board of Elections. Had the question, how will the funds be used? First item on it, construction of a new swimming pool, current pool is over 40 years old. My letter to the editor is published in the Athens News in October 2014, stated in part that the tax is needed to fund the master plan for the department. Also, we can start design plans to replace our 40-plus-year-old pool and complete that project with the amenities the community can support. I think that the important thing in here to remember is it's not just a pool or pools if you want to really change or go back to the voters and ask for more stuff. We've got a whole list of every facility within the city that, in nature parks and trails, and as I've said before, Mayor Beckett built the first segment of the bike path between Stimson Avenue and the wastewater treatment plant, and his term ended 28 years ago. And we've patched it a little bit, but I think we're going to have to replace that section of it within this 20 years. So there's plenty of projects to spend this money on. And I would think we just ought to get ahead and get going, because it's going to take 8 or 9 months probably to design this. And we are going to have public meetings in the design purpose. I mean, no designer is going to go in and, you haven't said in the ordinances, and the administration hasn't said, or anybody, as to exactly which one we want. We've just setting some guidelines and some budget ideas. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the comments. And we have at this point an amendment to the ordinance. And as I understand it, it would strike the word an outdoor strike the word outdoor and insert the word options after the word pool. So we have a motion and a second for this amendment. And I would like a show of hands so that we're clear that we have which way the vote goes. So all those in favor of amending Ordinance 0216 signify by raising your hand, please. So we have 4 council members for the amendment. Those opposed? Okay. We have 2 against. So the amendment passes.
Madam
Yes.
I move that we suspend rules to pass the ordinance that has just been amended. Seeing how that seemed to be one of the major concerns about people tonight is the lagging of this process.
Okay. And the reason for suspension being that there
We've
is an urgency.
talked a lot about it.
Well, and that there is an urgency
There is an
for
urgency.
proceeding with design plans for replacement of the pool and consideration of, at this point now, pool options. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules are now under suspension.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the amended 0216.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the amended Ordinance 216. All those in favor, and once again, I would ask for people to raise their hands, please. All those in favor of approving this amended motion, please raise your hand. Okay, we have a unanimous decision to move forward then with the ordinance as amended that gives us an option for pool options in the design phase. So thank you very much. All Our next ordinance is 316, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of softening salt for the water treatment plant. And this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'm almost ready to go home after that. Wore me out. I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 0-03-16.
Second.
Quite simply, this is some general housekeeping. We need to order the water softening salt, and this is coming from our water fund. It's approximately $200,000.
We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 316. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 416 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a housing revolving loan fund administration agreement with the State of Ohio Development Services Agency and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you again, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 0-04-16.
Second.
Thank you. Again, quite simply, this just allows the mayor's office to begin to execute this process and engage in the agreement with the state. This is a 3-year application, or every 3 years we renew this process. Any questions or comments?
And the revolving loan fund is something that the city utilizes for different projects, sometimes for housing projects, the last time for the accessibility area for the South Side Playground was the last time I think it was used. So this is the administrative portion of the agreement. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 416. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 516 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a water agreement with the LEAX Regional Water District to release upon annexation certain property within their service area to the City of Athens, and is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I request adoption of 516.
We have a second?
Second.
We talked about this a while ago. This concerns land out by University Estates in that general area. Currently, it is in the LEAX Water District, and the city has gone through a negotiation process with both the LEAX and the property owner in order for them to release the water to the city water district, which was a requirement to go further and annex this property in the future. And we had a discussion, and there were questions that were answered by the law director.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Cochran.
May I just ask a clarifying question on this? So this ordinance is not about the annexation. No. This is solely about the water agreement at this point.
Right. So this was, the city does not want to annex property that they do not provide water for themselves. So this is the first step. And the annexation will be the normal, lots of steps going through the annexation process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 516. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 616 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 23 Zoning Code to change the zoning of residential health care facilities, and it's introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I ask that we adopt 0616.
Second.
We had a public hearing about this at the beginning of this evening's festivities. This will help us to update us according to ADA requirements concerning healthcare facilities and not being against them in certain areas of the city.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 616. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 716 is an ordinance determining to proceed with the assessment procedure and sidewalk improvements on Central Avenue, North Congress Street and South May Avenue. It's project number 294, as described in Resolution R0715 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Cochran on behalf of Councilmember Pappy tonight.
Thank you. I move to adopt Ordinance 0716.
Second.
And this is part of an assessment project that we do every year. It's the responsibility of citizens to care for their sidewalks. And we have inventoried all of the sidewalks in the city, noting the ones that are marginal, the ones that are in good shape, but then the ones in need of immediate repair. So this is our step for assessing citizens for the amount that would be cost for the repairs. Citizens do have the option of appealing this in cases if they think it's unwarranted. They also have the option of putting it on their property taxes over a 10-year period, the improvement costs, so to make it affordable. So this is our next step in this process. So a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 716. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 816 is an ordinance authorizing engineering services for the East State Street US 33 project number 288, introduced once again by Councilmember Cochran on behalf of Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you, President Nisley. I move to adopt Ordinance 0816, and this is for a major project that we hope will help with the congestion around the Route 33 East State Street interchange.
Okay, a motion and a second for authorizing the first step of this, the engineering services for East State Street. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 916 is an ordinance authorizing improvements on Franklin Avenue, project number 301, introduced by Councilmember Cochran on behalf of Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt Ordinance 916, and this project will address some infrastructure issues and drainage issues on Franklin Avenue.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 916. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No.
Okay. The motion carries 5 to 1, excuse me. And the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 1016 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance and authorizing salary increases for certain positions in Athens County Municipal Court to be paid retroactively, and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to adopt 1016. 1016 is going to provide some funding of about $30,000 to cover salary increases for some certain positions within the municipal court, and second provision will be that these will be retroactive raises to January 1st, 2016. The court feels that they have the funds available to do this, and I see no reason why we shouldn't approve it.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 1016. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 1216 is an ordinance providing for the issuance of $35,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of renewing notes issued for the purpose of paying part of the costs of acquiring and installing energy conservation improvements at the city's recreation center and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to adopt 1216. The ordinance is exactly the way you read it. This is to pay down part of our debt. This will pay half of what we owe right now, and probably next year we'll pay the whole thing off.
We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 1216, repaying the last portions of the next to last payment on our note on this the borrowed money. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We have several ordinances for second reading, and just so we explain to the scouts and others in the audience that under most circumstances for all of these ordinances on a second reading, we generally just read the title and don't generally have discussion on them unless there's a motion to suspend on one of them. So ordinances for second reading. 1316, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of a salt truck, introduced by Councilmember Pappy. Ordinance 1516 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 116, stormwater repair on North Court Street, which is Project 300, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Knight. I may want to check in with the mayor's office to see if this needed to be suspended this evening or no. It's okay. Thank you.
Ordinance 1616, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 5, Public Utilities, Chapter 5.02, Garbage and Rubbish, Sections 5.02.03D, Preparation and Storage, and Title 29, Housing Regulations, Chapter 29.12, Premises Conditions, Section 29.12.02, Citation. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall. Now we have ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 1916 is an ordinance closing President Street and portions of Court and Union Streets on Saturday, April 16, 2016, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the International Street Fair. And this is introduced by Councilmember Cochran on behalf of Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you, President Nisley. This ordinance is an ordinance that we enact every year to enable this important community event to take place on our streets. And to read some of the ordinance, it states, whereas a request has been received from the Ohio University International Student and Faculty Services and the International Student Union to close a portion of Court Street in order that the International Street Fair may be held, be it ordained that the Mayor and Service Safety Director shall implement the following: closure of Court Street to vehicular traffic in the City of Athens from Washington to Mulberry. This is a departure from previous years as far as the streets involved. Union Street from Congress to College and President Street, except for necessary fire lanes at the intersections, on Saturday, April 16, 2016, from 7 a.m. for the International Street Fair, and ban parking on Court Street in the City of Athens between Washington and Mulberry, and on Union Street between Congress and College on Saturday, April 16, 2016, from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the International Street Fair.
Okay, thank you. And the next series of ordinances will be about other events during the summer that Council exercises legislative authority to close the streets, and in certain cases suspend the noise ordinance. The next one is Ordinance 2016, an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street on Friday, June 3rd and August 12th, and a portion of East Union Street on September 23rd, 2016, for a cruise-in, introduced by Councilmember Cochran for Councilmember Pappy.
And as President Nisley stated, this is for a cruise-in, something that we often do during the summer when many of our student population is gone, and we have a number of different events taking place in the uptown area of Athens, and look forward to folks coming out and patronizing our uptown businesses. This ordinance will close to vehicular traffic Court Street in the City of Athens from Washington to State, leaving open the right turn lane at the intersection of Washington on Friday, June 3rd, closing Court Street from Union to State on Friday, August 12th to include the King Midgets, and East Union Street from Court to College on Friday, September 23rd, 2016, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. for a cruise-in, and will result in banning of parking on Court Street between Washington and State in the City of Athens on Friday, June 3rd, between Union and State on Friday, August 12th, and East Union Street between Court and College. The intersection will remain open on Friday, September 23rd, 2016, from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. for a cruise-in.
Ordinance 2116 is an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street between Union and Washington on Saturday, August 13th, 2016, from noon to midnight for Bounty on the Bricks fundraiser, introduced by Councilmember Cochran for Councilmember Pappy.
And this is for the new annual event, the Bounty on the Bricks, which has become increasingly popular and takes place in August. and it will result in a Court Street closure to vehicular traffic in the city of Athens between Union and Washington on Saturday, August 13th, 2015, from 9 a.m. to midnight on the Bounty on the Bricks, for the Bounty on the Bricks fundraiser. I see that we have a little typo, 2015, so we're going to need to correct that. And B, ban parking on Court Street in the city of Athens between Union and State Streets on Saturday, August 13, 2016, from 5 a.m. to midnight for said event.
We now have Ordinance 2316, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application and enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the Safe Routes to School funds and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Cochran.
Thank
on
you.
behalf of Councilmember Patton.
The Safe Routes to School program has enabled us to build a number of new sidewalks and stairs throughout the city in places that are along routes to school to ensure the safety of our children as they are walking and commuting to their schools on a daily basis. So whereas the United States Congress has set aside monies for Safe Routes to Schools projects throughout the state of Ohio, the Department of Transportation, and whereas the City of Athens has approved school travel plan and will identify a project in accordance with that plan, be it ordained by the City of Athens, the Service Safety Director of the City of Athens is hereby authorized to prepare and execute an application and, if approved, enter into contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for Safe Routes to Schools funds. If awarded funds, the city agrees to pay 100% of construction and cost and over the maximum amount provided by the State of Ohio Department of Transportation. Upon completion of the project, and unless otherwise agreed, the City of Athens shall provide adequate maintenance for the project in accordance with applicable state and federal laws, including but not limited to 23 U.S.C. 116, provide ample financial provisions as necessary for the maintenance of the project, if necessary, maintain the right-of-way, keeping it free of obstructions, and if necessary, hold said right-of-way inviolate for public highway purposes.
We do need to suspend this one.
And we need to suspend the rules on this ordinance so that we can meet the grant deadline.
So you have a motion to suspend and a second for suspension of the rules so that we can meet the grant deadline for this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Cochran.
I move to adopt.
Okay, and the ordinance that we've just described for our Safe Routes to School grant program. All those in favor, we do have the motion in the second. All those in favor of approval of Ordinance 2316 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries, and the ordinance is approved, and we hope to have a successful grant again. It's done a lot of great projects. Ordinance 2416, an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance and Ordinance 7914 to increase the authorized expenditure for the Richland South project, introduced by Councilmember Cochran again.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pappy.
This one is to close out the books for a major project, which we're glad to see come to fruition. And so be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, the 2016 appropriation ordinance is hereby amended by appropriating the unappropriated balance the following sums: $63,050 to the Street Rehabilitation Fund, $1,043,647 to the Small Cities Grant Fund, $24,438 to the Water Fund, $16,938 to the Sewer Fund, and $10,574 to the Stormwater Fund, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount.
Okay. All right. Ordinance 2516 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance, and that is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. 2516 will amend the appropriation ordinance following ways. $2,560 will be to the general fund for police for training, $7,500 to CDBG fund, $248 TC 300 to pay property taxes for low-income housing properties, $5,000 to law enforcement trust fund 293 TC 300 for ongoing sexual assault investigation, and $250,000 to the TIF Fund 593 TC 300 for payments to the county auditor and city schools, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. I move we adopt 2516.
So it's the first reading. You need to suspend the
sorry.
rules first.
Do we? Administration?
Do we need to suspend and adopt tonight?
Okay.
We're
Then we
all right
don't.
with that one.
I was
We
mistaken
do
on that.
have one a little bit later on.
Yes.
Prior year bill that we will need to. Okay. In fact, the next one, perhaps, ordinance 2616 is an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency.
There we go.
Introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
2615, as you said, is authorizing payment of prior year expense. The auditor is hereby authorized to expend up to $6,000 for Medical Fund 866-120 TC 300 to pay a prior year bill to Ohio Health of Glennis for pre-employment testing. So the administration agrees that this should be suspended?
Yes. Yes, we
Yes.
do need to suspend this one. So
Very
if
well.
you would make a motion to suspend.
Yes.
And the reason being that it's a prior year bill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to suspend the rules for ordinance 2616. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Reisner.
Move we adopt 2616.
Second, please. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of ordinance 2616. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 2716 is an ordinance authorizing asbestos and lead abatement at the Armory. This is project number 297, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. We're starting to move on the rehabilitation of the old Armory building, and it's one of those parts way past due and needs to be done. I don't believe we have to suspend on this one, do we? No, we don't. Okay. So let me read the ordinance here. An ordinance authorizing asbestos and lead abatement at the Armory Project 297. The Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to advertise and accept bids where necessary and to enter into contracts for lead and asbestos abatement at the Armory Project 297. The 2016 Appropriation Ordinance 1/2015 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $45,000 to the General Fund 101 TC 300. The Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $45,000 from the General Fund TC 300 for said abatement.
The next ordinance is ordinance 2816, an ordinance amending ordinance 1816 to increase the appropriation for the depot lift station. That's project number 286, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Nisley. We've spoke about the depot lift station a couple times here. I believe this evening that I need to request suspension of the rules.
Yes. Second. So we have a motion and a second for suspending the rules for this appropriation for the depot lift station. The reason being...
There is an emergency clause.
Okay.
It's also an important necessity.
Immediate need to do this as it controls, I think, the sewage
on the west
for
side.
A lot of the city. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Butler.
And at this moment, too, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance 2816.
Second.
Thank you. We spoke about this before in committee, and it's been amended a couple times. I think the most recent incarnation we see in front of us had an inadvertent decrease in appropriations, so this has been then fixed, if that's my understanding. Sounds correct. We have a sum of $708,000 for this project, and it is a necessity, as we acknowledged.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of ordinance 2816. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved.
Thank you, President.
Ordinance 2916 is an ordinance granting the renewal of a revocable license to Brad Jageman, owner of 15, 17, and 19 Bayard Street, to allow parking on the city right-of-way. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
We don't need to suspend or anything on this. This is just what it says. It was originally, the revocable license was given in 2005. They are good for 10 years, and this is a renewal.
Okay. We'll now move on to a resolution for first reading, and this is R416, a resolution designating depositories for active monies for deposit in public depositories pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Chapter 135 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas March 1st, 2016 is the day to designate the financial institutions to be public depositories for the active public monies of the city, and this council finds the notices for said appropriations were duly published as required by law, and whereas applications requesting public depositories were received from the following financial institutions pursuant to Resolution 0216, J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Hocking Valley Bank, People's Bank, the Citizens Bank, Century National Bank, and whereas this council finds that the sureties and securities tendered by these financial institutions are proper and qualify as public depositories for the active public monies of the city and shall be designated as follows. 1, J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Athens, Ohio, not to exceed $10 million. 2, Hocking Valley Bank, Athens, Ohio, not to exceed $10 million. 3, People's Bank, Athens, Ohio, not to exceed $10 million. 4, the Citizens Bank, Athens, Ohio, not to exceed $10 million. 5, Century National Bank, Athens, Ohio, not to exceed $10 million. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, the active depositories of public monies of the City of Athens, Ohio, are hereby awarded in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code Section 135.04G as follows. 1, first $25,000 to J.P. Morgan Bank Chase on the basic of operating needs of the City of Athens. 2, the balance of active monies to be deposited in Hocking Valley Bank, People's Bank, the Citizens Bank, Century National Bank, and J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, criteria as established by the Treasurer of the City of Athens, but shall not exceed the amount specified in each bank application.
And this is a renewal that we have with our depositories every 5 years. We do have Treasurer McClure if anybody has any additional questions or needs clarification on this. Any other comments?
I don't.
And I do believe the Clerk of Council has indicated we have a March 1 deadline for renewing the application with these depositories. So we probably need to consider suspending the rules and approving tonight.
I hereby move that we suspend the rules for the adoption of it.
Second.
And the reason being that we do have this March 1 deadline,
We have a deadline
for the prompt renewal. All those in favor of the motion and second to suspend the rules signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Reisner.
I move to adopt R0416.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries. The resolution has been approved, and thank you very much for all your work on this, Treasurer McClure. We have now one reading resolution, R516, a resolution in support of PM Management's application to the Ohio Development Services Agency for an Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit Award for a rehabilitation project. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt Resolution 0516.
And do we have a second?
Second. Sorry.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 516, and I believe we did have a presentation last week about this.
We actually had passed resolution on the first round. I think many of the people had applied for this tax credit. This particular one did not get awarded the tax credit, so he's going and applying again. This is to further support what's going down. This is for 16 West Union Street, and the PM Management and Guy Phillips has been doing a huge job working on this, and this is something that we can support him in going in forward with his project.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I just want to briefly acknowledge my support for this as well and acknowledge my that I'm pleased with the administration as well as council and as well as our private entrepreneurs in this community for working together on this. This is a big deal. Obviously what happened on Union Street was devastating, and this is a part of the process of moving forward and helping rehabilitate the space. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 516. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The resolution passes. The ordinance and if the motion carries and the resolution has now been approved. Thank you. We now have, having read through these ordinances and resolution, have 2 or 3 other items that we'll be taking care of tonight. The first being announcements and other business. And so that I don't forget, as far as announcements, do we have council committees that will be meeting next week? Do we have any needs for council meetings? Committee meetings, excuse me. Transportation, service safety, planning and development, finance and personnel?
Usually.
Usually. Okay, so perhaps finance and personnel.
It's the 5th Monday in the month.
We are. We're going, it's the 4th? Okay, it's the 4th Monday.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nice try.
Almost. Okay.
There are 5 Mondays.
We still, but we still have an,
There are 5
but we still have an
Mondays.
opportunity.
In February.
Committee meetings next week. We will likely be having finance and personnel. Okay, almost there.
Next
All right.
week.
3 announcements that I have quickly to take care of this week. There is, as some people might have already realized, a delay in the trash pickup because of the President's holiday today. So that will be a 1-day delay for everyone this week. And then tomorrow, February 16th, is the last day for citizens in Athens City and Athens County to register to vote. So we've got an important primary coming up, and I would urge all citizens to be part of that process. One thing to consider, if you have changed your address, you need to register to vote with the change of address for the Board of Elections, so that you're up to date and current when you go to the polls. And then tomorrow evening, the League of Women Voters of Athens County are going to be sponsoring a candidates forum, and that's held in cooperation with the Athens Public Library. And it will be the candidates for the Democratic nomination for the Ohio House, the 94th seat. And so that is the seat currently held by Debbie Phillips. She's not eligible for re-election because of term limits, and so we do have 2 persons who are contending for the Democratic position slot. It starts at 6:30 at the library and ends by 8 o'clock. Public's invited to attend. Other announcements that we might have from other council members or from Mayor Patterson? All right, and we now have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. And I know that several of you have come here tonight to speak on several issues. If you'll give us your name and address, and then also know that you're to keep your comments to 3 minutes. So welcome you to come up and speak before us tonight. And it's general during this particular moment. It's an opportunity for citizens to speak. It's not like a committee meeting night, so you can offer the comments, but we don't offer answers, nor do we engage in discussion at this point. So thank you. Mr. Allison.
Yeah. Abe Allisop, 1 Westfield Place. I know in the coming weeks in committee and hopefully through a regular vote, you guys are going to be discussing Airbnb. I know it's already been discussed about Airbnb or B&Bs in general, but this specifically is Airbnb. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, I hope that in the coming weeks you'll educate yourselves on it. No other city, well, let me rephrase that. In Columbus, Ohio, our state's capital, they have no regulations on Airbnb. I think that could be a good starting place for you guys to look at when you're putting together legislation in committee. A city, the largest, most populous city in the state of Ohio, has no regulations on Airbnb. I understand that's probably too much to ask for, but if we could just compromise where it's just a simple one-time licensing procedure to have be able to run an Airbnb. I know Councilman Reisner was saying in the last committee meeting with Airbnbs, you can't just create it, like set it up and just do it as you want. But people aren't really just creating businesses. It's a supplemental income. I'm not going out and being a full-time Airbnb rep or employee. I'm literally sometimes getting supplemental income, $200-300 here and there, depending on how long they're staying. So I really just urge you guys, like, come to maybe even just a compromise where we can allow Airbnb to be legal with little to no regulation. Like I said, City of Columbus, I would encourage you guys to maybe talk to their service safety directors, zoning, whatever. Come up to a compromise where we can have it where I'm not getting a cease and desist order for $500 because I'm simply renting out a room to a couple parents visiting their kids on a crazy weekend where they can't get a hotel room, and if they do, it's ungodly. So I just asked you guys to keep that in consideration moving forward in the coming weeks, and that you legalize Airbnb with little to no regulation.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jack Frederick Davis, and I live in 48 East Green Drive. And I'd like to address the Airbnb issue. Winston Churchill once said that 1,001 petty regulations dismisses and destroys all faith in law. Now, regulations are important. They're meant to restrain and protect those who are not protected and make sure information reaches those where it may be in the benefit of business operators to restrict access to accurate information. But why, may I ask, are the regulations being launched on Airbnb? I personally have not seen any irate letters from citizens in Athens complaining about the lack of quality of services, or motorists writing in about awful congestion caused by a migration of couch surfers into the Athens city limits. Property breeds liberty. It breeds control over your personal situation and allows for climbing. In this current day and age, students are finding themselves faced with mounting debt. Debt is a massive limitation on personal freedom. All ambitions are to be cancelled so that one can pay their creditor. But how is one meant to pay their creditor when the means of production are being the meager ones available are being so regulated? Isn't it that a person's right to rent out their own couch in their own house for $300 just so they can pay the bills and contribute towards rising up the ladder of American enterprise in order to get a greater job for them and their families, to provide prosperity and stability to their family lives? I challenge you to offer a run to students off campus who are struggling with their debt. Let them engage in small enterprise and climb up. This is what America is about. I just challenge you to live up to that ambition. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Other comments from the audience on topics?
Hello, my name is Sam Raptis. I live at 38 North McKinley Avenue, apartment number 210. I'd also like to speak on the topic of the Airbnb regulations. Just briefly, I'm sure we recall our last encounter on this subject, and my feelings are similar now as they were then, so I'll keep it brief. But basically, there's two components to why you might notice a couple of us in these shirts. They say generation opportunity, and to build on the theme that my colleague, Mr. Jack Davis, had on this idea of generation opportunity is that technology really provides this sort of prosperity and this sort of opportunity where, especially with the advent of the internet, where traditional regulation was once seen as the only option. And in fact, it has actually been proven empirically that that's not the only way to necessarily evaluate the quality of a service or its safety. There's actually a much stronger sense of control, a much stronger sense of make ensuring quality that's done when it's provided by the consumers themselves. There's, if it's a bureaucrat or a council member can't possibly, or any sort of regulatory agency can't possibly be looking in every single Airbnb residence at every time to see if it's going to be properly, that it's going to be a good place for them. But the citizens staying there and the customers of the app service are vetted through that service, similar to how Uber is vetted and how you give a rating. So these ratings really are much more scrutinious on quality than any centralized regulation could be. So I'd really urge the council to consider this new advent of the internet, giving us this opportunity to, where regulation was once seen as necessary and optimal, where that regulation really might do a lot of harm to students who are really just trying to make up some of their student debt and also provide a cheaper alternative. And so that's the one part of it. There's the financial sense that, economically speaking, you want more people here. If the hotels are rather expensive, and then morally, so there's a second issue. Is just from a moral perspective, it just doesn't make sense, because if you can have somebody for free in your house, which obviously is uncontroversial, then why all of a sudden, if you're doing it through an app and you're charging somebody, it becomes this whole affair. I just think from a moral perspective that the citizens of Athens deserve that individual liberty that Jack alluded to, and that opportunity for ourselves to maintain autonomy over our life and our property, as is our rights as a citizen. Thanks.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Any other comments? A few others.
Good evening. My name is Connor Fogarty. I live at 300 West State Street, apartment H4. That's Westview. I want to thank everybody, I guess, for coming out. I think it's honestly important for everybody to come and see this meeting. I know I almost didn't make it out. A lot of ice on the floor, or ground, excuse me. Anyway, I guess I would like to get talking about my sort of views on the Airbnb issue. I'm a third-year student at Ohio University, but I'm also a concerned citizen. I do rent a residence in Athens, and when I heard about Mr. Alisaf's issue, you might have noticed a few of us students have gotten up tonight. We've all kind of gotten together and we've realized that what this boils down to is it's an issue concerning Mr. Alisaf's private property. And obviously there are conflicting interests. I'm sure Mr. Alisaf has certain visions of what he ought to be able to do. And in the best judgment that you have made, I suppose for whatever reason you decided that there is a sort of negative to his ability to do that. I'm not accusing anybody here, but I'm only saying that just objectively looking at this issue, it really doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense why Mr. Alisaf shouldn't be able to rent out his home simply to pay off his mortgage. So, again, I'm not going to point any fingers, but please, I would urge City Council to just rethink this decision and rethink if really this causes any concrete public nuisance or negative effect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brendan Kerr. I'm at 300 West State Street, also at Westview Apartments. I'm here to speak on the bed and breakfast or Airbnb issue. And I'd like to say that it's important, at least I think that as citizens who actively take part in the political process, at the local level especially, is that we take a certain level of scrutiny when examining cases of which, when citizens act and there is no transaction of monetary value. And in the case of Airbnb, it is not only perfectly legal, but it is a mark of one's charity. Mr. Alisaf could have, for free, had given all of his guests a roof over their heads, fed them, sent them on their way. I don't believe genuinely that anyone would have brought it up as a problem of the city. It's whether or not monetary value is exchanged, the simple fact remains that this
remains a transaction between individuals, the host and the guest. And I think, honestly, that the interjection of government into such a transaction is unnecessary and simply clouds the issue. And that I would like to remind people who would like to say that Airbnb, that is a new phenomenon, it simply isn't. This kind of transaction between guests and hosts is one of the oldest transactions in human history. It is not a difference in the nature of the transaction, it is simply taken on a different form. It's a very successful form, in fact. Citing a Business Insider article written back in September of 2015, states that people who have used Airbnb back in 2010 numbered 47,000. That number has jumped to over 17 million in the year 2015. This indicates to me, along with the other success stories of companies like Uber and Lyft, that room sharing, ride sharing, this new market of sharing, is quickly becoming ingrained in the American economy, and is simply here to stay, love it or hate it. I also believe that this is simply a natural thing that happens over the course of human history. Entrepreneurs find new ways to innovate services that are alternatives to the current system that's in place, and this simply happens. I also believe that, and I also think that when governments try and put up barriers to halt this path of innovation, they're all, speaking openly and honestly, they're all destined to fail, not because legalization of these types of services is up to fail, it's because people simply do them anyway. Whether constrained by time, money, or convenience, these people who are left behind are slowly pushed into black market alternatives, in which I think everybody in this room agrees are more dangerous and harmful for all parties involved when such is the case. I implore City Council to consider this when the resolution for this issue comes up. I thank you for giving myself and my fellow concerned citizens the opportunity to speak on this issue, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. Any other comments from citizens? Yes, come on up.
My name is Jack Stauffer, 69 Elmwood, Athens. I'm here to discuss the bed and breakfast, Airbnb, home sharing, however we're going to refer to it. I just became aware of this discussion and movement on Friday the 12th after seeing a partial replay of the Planning and Development Committee on February 8th or 9th, I believe. I have a few thoughts in regard to this. I'm sure I'll do my research and consult with the citizens and professionals as needed to become brought up to speed on my rights, basically my property rights, as it pertains to the residential zones of our city. I'm not talking about any business zones. I'm addressing residential zones. Business zones, I believe, were developed for business. Residential zones, on the other hand, were developed for more quiet and calm personal residences. Business and business zones create income for business owners, taxes for governments, but they also create an increase in traffic, noise, parking problems, litter from paper, plastic, down to beer bottles, dog poop, and cigarette butts, all of which I do not want on my street. Bed and breakfast and or renting out rooms without breakfast seems equal to rooming houses with a much higher turnover and potential problems. I haven't had time to research what the other problems and or uncomfortable situations this could cause, but this now has my attention and is a real concern. I will likely rally the folks on the Near East Side to help me maintain our current quality of life. I, for one, am willing to drag out my checkbook and hire attorneys and professionals as needed. A fellow East Sider, shut up. A fellow East Sider researched this online, and it is turning into a big business, and companies are buying up property just to rent Airbnbs. You could verify this. I am not anti-business, and some or most of you may know that I've been in business for many years for myself, and I am still in the business of being a landlord here in town. Now, I'll research those points further, but as memory serves me, somewhere around 20 years ago, the number of tenants in R1 and R2 were reduced from 4 unrelated to 3 unrelated, I believe, to address density and traffic. A number of years back, the near rezoned from R2 to R1, again, I believe, to address density and traffic. This current trend seems to be headed in the opposite direction. I hold high hopes that you folks with the power will work to maintain the quality of life in my neighborhood and our great little town that I love so much. I got more to say, but let me just say that, let me just wrap it up here and be polite. I got more to say. I'll be back at the next meeting. I'll be at the development meetings. But nobody wants to live next door to a hotel, whether it's big or small.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do have one comment that was submitted to me tonight. It was on another topic, and this is unusual, but this is a person who was not able to attend, thinking that the vote was going to be on the mural on Arts West tonight. And when she sent in the comment, I did say that I would enter it into the record. And so this is from a resident, Jean Cunningham, who lives on the Near East Side, who used to live on the West Side near the Arts West mural. She's writing to express strong opposition to the proposal to decorate the retaining wall that runs along Miller from the north corner of West State Street, continuing up the ramp to the parking lot at East Arts West. The wall was created when the city built a sidewalk along the south side of Miller Street between Walker and West State. It was designed as a retaining wall, not a display area, should never have been considered for this purpose. Based on the problematic location and nature of the design, and at this point she thought the vote was going to be tonight, she urges council to vote no. And she used the criteria for artwork placement as stated in the policy for public art document, and these factors need to be considered: public safety, visibility, lighting, traffic patterns, function of the existing facility or site, relationship of the proposed artwork to the pre-existing artworks on the site, future development plans, landscape design, environmental assessment, public accessibility, appropriateness of the physical characteristics of the site, and relation of the social and cultural identity of the immediate local community. The site chosen for the project presents problems with auto and pedestrian safety along a narrow side street that sees a lot of usage. Cars entering the intersection from West State are often traveling at a rate of speed that's unsafe for viewing anything other than the oncoming traffic. The street in the section is barely wide enough for 2 cars. That's why the tire tracks can often be seen on the lawn across from the entrance to Arts West parking lot and on the curbs. Cars coming from the Walker Street intersection are in a similar predicament, having to negotiate a tight turn where cars may be entering or exiting the parking lot. Rather than take the sidewalk, many pedestrians walk in the street along that section. Those who live in the neighborhood know that a view without distraction is the best choice when considering public safety. If the project is seen as an attraction for Arts West attendees, then a project on the entrance walk to the front door or inside the building is more appropriate. The retaining wall is not visible to those who enter Arts West from West State Street and is not visible for anyone parking in back and walking along the upper walk to one of the building entrances. If the visitors really want to go out of their way to look at the wall, they'd not even have a good view from the lower sidewalk. And then she attaches some photos. Conversely, the residents across the street at the corner of Miller and Walker would never be able to stop viewing the decorated wall. They'd see it from their porches, yards, and windows. They would not only see it not only when coming to the neighborhood, they'd see it every day and live with what could easily become an attractive nuisance. And none of the residents would be able to erect a visual shield, such as a privacy fence, to block the view. A front yard fence for those properties would not meet setback requirements, and it's doubtful the BZA would allow a variance. Even if a variance were granted, it would look unsightly and be a financial burden on the homeowner. To impose a continuous visual intrusion into their daily lives is unnecessary and unreasonable. In reference to the last item in the above list, I'll say this: the proposed project falls far short of having a relationship with the neighborhood. If council members truly think this project is important to Athens, then find a spot for it elsewhere. People in that neighborhood have spent many years trying to clean things up and deal with the tagging, graffiti, vandalism that is pervasive and ongoing. In an R1 neighborhood, the city should be protecting the private property owners, not imposing an unnecessary burden. When you consider your vote, please don't let your decision be determined by whether you think art is important in Athens, and your decision should not be based on whether you like the design or would want it at your house. Your decision should have nothing to do with meeting a deadline for Beautification Week or satisfying the guidelines for any university-generated project. What you should do is support the right of the private property owner and the residents in R1 neighborhoods to live without public or private nuisances. I understand the wall is city property, and I've been told by the past city administration that it can do anything it wants on city property. I hope that attitude will become a thing of the past. As the saying goes, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It doesn't seem unreasonable to expect a commission charged with creative thinking to come up with another site for the project. They can, and you should ask them to do that. Council members should base their decision on what's best for the welfare of the people whose voices are often ignored. And we will have another opportunity in a few weeks when we, as I understand, it will not need to be a resolution, but a motion of approval for the Arts West mural. So there'll be an opportunity for that. All right. I think we're done with all of our business for this evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion and second for adjournment of the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and motion carries. Thank you very much.